Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Wednesday for an intro to Flutter. I'm very pleased to introduce Tadas Petra, who has been fortunate, who has been grateful enough to, we're fortunate enough. I'm butchering this introduction really, really badly. We are fortunate enough to have him run a workshop in our community. And a little background on Tadas. He's worked in Fortune 500 companies as a senior software engineer. He actually found an interest in Flutter way before it was released and started working with it. He saw that there wasn't a lot of content online for it and ended up creating his own YouTube channel. I think a lot of you could relate to that. His channel is focused on Flutter, and he's going to be going over that in this workshop. And I hope you enjoy today's workshop. Over to you, Tadas.
All right. Hello, everybody. That was a pretty good intro. She pretty much nailed it. I have one slide on that I was going to quickly cover, but yeah, this is going to be an introduction to Flutter, so it's going to be very basic. My goal is to kind of get you started to understand what Flutter is all about and kind of why I'm so interested in it. Like she's mentioned, I started Flutter almost 3 years ago now. It got released either end of 2018 or very beginning of 2019. I don't remember, but I started using it like 6 months before. And since then I just loved it. So I kept going, and I think I've learned a good amount since then. So hopefully I can share some of that knowledge here. So there's kind of two periods of my professional life: engineering life, coding life. I would graduate from UIC in computer engineering. My last year, I got an internship at this company called Navistar. They build embedded, well, I guess they build the whole truck. So they're the second or third biggest truck manufacturer in the United States. I worked there on embedded systems, so very low level stuff, writing embedded C code and some C++ stuff like that. And on the side, I like to make websites and apps, things like that. So that naturally led me to Flutter. And then after Flutter, I decided to make a YouTube channel because I saw the way I learn stuff the best is off of YouTube videos. And at that time, there wasn't much content online for Flutter. Sorry, there was a little bug hanging. There was some content, but not too much. And I was hoping maybe I could help some people learn Flutter and find it interesting. So I started my YouTube channel. I started like 1 year and 2 months ago. January 15th, 2020 was my first video. Since then, I put out 114 videos. This number is a little outdated now. I made this slide a couple of days ago. Now it's at 12,000 subscribers. And I'm also active on Twitter. So if you want to go there as well. Now, these numbers aren't really important, but I was hoping to kind of show you that I got a little bit of credibility in Flutter and that I've learned a little bit throughout this time. But enough about me. Let's get to the actual Flutter content. So Flutter is built on a language called Dart. And I think this kind of scares a lot of people away because they think, oh, in order to use Flutter, I have to learn a whole new language. Like most of you are probably, if you're web developing, using JavaScript, TypeScript, stuff like that, and you see a new language and that kind of scares you. You don't want to learn it. But in my opinion and my experience, Dart is actually pretty simple to pick up. It's actually very similar to JavaScript, C#, TypeScript, all those languages. The syntax is pretty similar, and it's just, that's what I came from. I came from JavaScript, and I did not have a tough time transitioning at all. And the really cool thing, if you don't know, Flutter was built by Google. So they're backed by one of the biggest companies, right? And Dart is also built by Google. So I think that gives it another extra advantage because both sides are built by Google. Let's say if you're working with React, that's JavaScript. They don't own both sides of the like skeleton of the framework. And with Google, they control everything. So then you get to the actual Flutter. Now, Flutter is a framework, so it's just Dart code made easy to use, and helps you compile into mobile, web, desktop, and embedded software. If you guys are following along a little bit, you'll notice Flutter 2 just came out recently, and they made Flutter web stable and desktop kind of stable. So it's in the stable channel, but it's still technically in beta. So now you can, according to their definition, you should be able to build production level apps for mobile and web, and then maybe desktop. So here's a couple of things that I think sets Flutter apart from other frameworks. So the biggest thing is just the one code base. So you have to write code once, and it compiles to all those different platforms. And the nice thing about it is it compiles to native code. So it's not like there's some frameworks out there like Ionic at the beginning. I think now it's changed. I'm not sure, but they kind of just put a website link over your application. That's not what Flutter does. Flutter compiles to native code. One of the biggest features that I think blows people away when they use it is hot reload. So whenever you're developing an app, you can just change one variable and almost instantly your app will get updated with the new content. So sometimes it feels like magic when you're developing because everything just happens so quick. I got too used to hot reload when I went to work on some other frameworks. I'm like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long? The next part is performance. Now, while native code, you can probably never beat native performance with a framework, Flutter gets pretty close in a lot of scenarios. There's some places it's lacking. I think animations, like complex animations early in the app cycle, that's one place it's lacking, but they're working on that as well. But performance is pretty close to native. Most of the time, I can't really tell the difference. Now, this part is probably the biggest the biggest, best thing for me, at least. I find it super simple to develop with. I'll give a little explanation on why I think it's simple, and hopefully you'll find it simple as well. But a part of that is that they use material design and Cupertino design within the actual framework. So it makes it easy for you to design stuff. I'm personally not a great designer. So having those components in the actual framework to make apps simple for you is really nice. So this next part is kind of about why I think it's simple and a little background of how Flutter actually works. So if you start working with Flutter, you'll probably hear this quote a lot, that everything is a widget. Widgets are probably the key part of Flutter, and the one thing you need to kind of really grasp before you start using it. Actually, there's that little kinda. I don't want to get too into details, but technically it's a element that gets built into a render object. So everything is technically a render object, but doesn't sound as nice. And everything is a widget makes more sense for people. So if you think about it, Flutter is just a bunch of widgets. Your whole Flutter app is kind of just one big tree of widgets. And once you get that one main thought like down and you really understand what that means, I think everything falls into line really easily. So in this session, we're going to go through the base app that you get from, like, this basically Flutter's Hello World app, and we'll go through the widget tree that and kind of show you exactly how Flutter runs and works and stuff like that. This is the widget tree for the starter app. So this starter app, let me actually show you what it is first. This is what it looks like. So you have a screen and you can add the button whatever many times. And this is the whole widget tree for that app. Now, if you remember, everything is a widget. So that means each one of these is a widget. So you have the My App widget, which your whole app is one widget. Then below you have the Material app, which pretty much tells you that this is going to be a material designed app. if you're not sure about what Material and Cupertino was like a design style for Android versus iOS. So this is saying it's going to be an Android looking app. Below you have the actual pages. And then below the page widget, you have a scaffold widget, which is basically the backdrop, the one that holds up all your components. Then you have an app bar widget with a text inside, a center widget with a column inside with 2 texts, and then a floating action button with an icon. Now, when I look at this, this seems pretty simple to me. Like it's just kind of puzzle pieces that you put together and you get a whole app. Now I want to walk you through the code of this because the code doesn't get much more complicated than this. Obviously, there's more words and stuff here, but it's not too bad. So let me make this bigger. So you have a main, like most languages. This is where the entry point for your app is. And then remember that my app widget. So you're basically saying this is the main widget of my app. This is where the app runs. I guess I should have covered a little bit about stateless and stateful widgets. So there's 2 types of widgets in Flutter. There's a stateless widget, which doesn't hold any state. It's just kind of like a constant widget, I guess. And then there's a stateful widget, which can hold some sort of state. If you remember that counter, that's a state we were holding within this stateful widget. So that's two main concepts that you got to grasp. Everything's a widget, 2 types of widgets, stateless and stateful widgets, and then everything is just one big widget tree. So the My App is just a stateless widget since there's no status that is holding, it's just the app. And within it, we remember the Material app is a widget. There's some stuff you could configure within that widget, but then that leads you to your next widget, your home page. The home page is a stateful widget, which means it's holds some state since you have that counter that we're keeping track of. Then this is just some syntax for stateful widgets. I don't want to get too deep into this. But then you have the scaffold like we remember seeing, an app bar with a text, a center with a column with 2 texts in there, and then a button with an icon. Now we're going through this a bit fast, but you can check this out by yourself. It's not, most of this is just comments. If you remove all the comments, there's 65 lines of code for this whole app, which I think it's probably not the simplest app you've ever seen. It does a lot of stuff here already. But it's just, that's why, in my opinion, it's so simple. You just build out a widget tree like this. You can visually draw it out. I think that's actually one of the best ways to debug Flutter apps is to kind of get a visual drawn out for how your app actually looks. And then, I could show you one more thing. So there's this thing called Devtools that lets you look at the widget tree right here. So you can actually see that same tree that we're working with and that I showed you there inside Flutter itself. So this helps you debug stuff. It's really, they provide you a lot of help with this. And once you got that concept down that everything's a widget, I know I keep reiterating it, but things start to really make sense. So that's just a quick walk through it. That's all we're gonna go through, but obviously it gets a little bit more complicated than this with state and all that type of stuff. Then one more thing I wanted to cover. Well, 2 more things actually. So you might have heard of Flutter 2.0. It just came out recently. So the new things there was web became stable, desktop became stable, and then there was this big thing called sound null safety. This sound null safety is one of the big benefits I talked about at the beginning with Google owning Dart and Flutter. They brought a feature called null safety to Dart. So pretty much if you get null exceptions in any other language, that's not really a thing for Flutter anymore. Like null exceptions, you can override them and create them, but they don't really happen. That's because the compiler can now tell you if you would have a null exception before you even run the code. That stuff's really nice. There's a lot more things, like a bunch of companies that started supporting it. Toyota is going to put Flutter inside of its infotainment systems. Then iRobot built their website with Flutter, which is pretty cool. And then even Microsoft pitched in with their Surface Duo now supports with Flutter. Flutter now supports Surface Duo screens. Oh yeah, and Linux actually Ubuntu made Flutter their default choice for building apps. So it's growing really fast, and there's lots of cool things that just came out. So I think it's a great time to learn it as well. And the last part, I wanted to show you where you could learn Flutter, because I think that's the kind of stuff that people struggle with the most at the beginning. And my best advice is just the Flutter documentation. I can't tell you how many times this is always the first place I go to learn anything new. Their documentation is one of the best that I've seen around. You can literally click into like every widget. You have a good description with some example codes and stuff like that. Then of course on YouTube, now there's a good amount of Flutter YouTubers with me, of course. And next part is if you're trying to do a Udemy course, I've heard really good things about Angela Yu's Udemy course for Flutter. And I haven't personally taken it, but I walked through all the topics that she covers, and hers is probably the most viewed Flutter YouTube Udemy course. And the stuff she covers is really good. She covers a lot of object-oriented programming principles within Flutter that I don't see many other tutorials talk about. And on Twitter also, if you there's a lot of Flutter people on there, and I've learned a lot of things from everybody there. So those are my top 4 places that I go to. But there's more. Build stuff. That's also the best way to learn, just by building apps, learning through it while you're building it, and you'll be pretty successful in Flutter, hopefully. So now I'll open it up to any questions. That's all I had for today. If you have any questions, let me know. I don't know how the questions work here on Zoom.
Tadas, will be, guys, feel free to open up your mic if you feel comfortable to ask questions, or if you want to just drop them on the chat, that's fine too.
I hope you don't mind if I unmute and ask a question. I am a newer developer, and I've been mostly working with React. Do you think for developing, because I want to try and develop an app, do you think should I go ahead and try to do it with Flutter, or should I try and stick with like React Native?
So, I mean, I think my opinion is a little bit biased, of course, because I've been working with Flutter, like everything's built on Flutter. But my recommendation to anybody is, if you have a project you want to finish, do it in a way that will be quickest for you. React Native, in my opinion, Flutter is better than React Native. There's some backup to that, like in terms of performance and other things, but it's not that much better. Like React Native apps, there's React Native apps all over the app stores. You're going to get a well-functioning app with React Native. So if you're comfortable with that and that'll get the job done faster, then I don't think there's a reason to switch unless you want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I can go over some code stuff if anybody wants, like if you're curious about any parts of this code as well, feel free. I'm all yours.
Can you show again how you opened that widget inspector?
Sure. So this is in VS Code. And Flutter works with Android Studio pretty well as well. But if you do Command P or Control P, and then you do this sign, you can open Dart DevTools. Sometimes you'll get a pop-up at the bottom right that says open Dart DevTools and stuff, but this is the way you could always get to it. And you'll see all these options. So I usually actually like to work with this one, open DevTools in web browser. Hopefully it doesn't open it somewhere weird. Oh, nice. because here you see all these debugging options.
Cool. Thanks.
So yeah, like you got also some nice things. If you click into this, you could actually see what the layouts are like and even adjust them. So I'll show you this. Debugging with Flutter is very handy. So let's say you change this to loose. It doesn't change anything, but sometimes it does. I guess this specific layout doesn't change much, but yeah, you have performance debugging, CPU profiling, memory, networking, logging, app size debuggers, all sorts of stuff.
As I think there might be some questions in the chat as well.
So, I'm not too good at using Zoom. How do I can't see the chat.
So right under where,
found it.
right close to, okay, perfect.
All right. Let's see. Also, can we connect to different backends and databases? Definitely. So the most popular one with Flutter is Firebase. It's pretty much, again, Firebase is controlled by Google. So you have everything tied together really seamlessly. Almost, I say Firebase almost like 90% of the market with Flutter apps because it's just so easy to use and good. And the way you implement it is you just add the Firebase plugin and then you're ready to go pretty much. What is Scaffold for? So Scaffold, just like it sounds, it holds your page. With Flutter, it's really nice too, because all this documentation is inside the code. So you can kind of go through and read through. This one's not as nice. I think it just gives you all the properties ones. Oh yeah, Scaffold. Look at all this, yeah. So Scaffold will expand to fill the available space. That usually means that it'll occupy the entire window or device screen. It says it's designed to be a top-level container for your app, for your material app. So it just kind of holds all your components within there. Flutter. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention all the Google apps. There's a bunch of Google apps supported by Flutter now as well. It's really nice. I missed a lot in the chat. If there anyone already familiar. I haven't seen a tutorial who said the line "everything is a widget." It's popular within the Google team, and even inside their documentation, they mentioned that everything's like a widget. Is Angel a good framework for creating APIs? I've never heard of Angel. I'm not too sure. Yeah, I haven't used Angel, and then you mentioned Aqueduct as well. I haven't used that either. There's so much to try in Flutter, and like now I think there's like over 15,000 packages now, so there's a good amount of support from the community as well. So it's kind of hard to keep up with everything, but I try to use all the biggest things. Yeah, there's so much. There's a lot with going on with Flutter right now, and it's growing super fast as well. So it's nice, but also at the same time, it can be a little bit overwhelming.
Awesome. So are we at the mark, Tadas, or is there did you have some more time for Q&A?
I got some more time, sure.
Okay, perfect.
Can you say how I can add a payment gateway to my Flutter app? So I actually have a video coming out about that in next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday. There's more packages than just this one, but this one is for this package called Invoice Ninja. They basically handle all your payment, like business side of things, pretty well. They got like, they can set up different gateways with PayPal, Stripe, all those things. But Stripe also has its own plugin, so you can set that up as well. There's plugins for most things. Which animation library can be used with Flutter? So Flutter has its own animation things, animation widgets. They have animations, not my strong suit. Design and like animations, it's not my best, but there's a good amount of animation support with Flutter. And I think they make it a little bit easier than how it was with JavaScript. But again, I didn't do much animating with JavaScript and stuff, so I'm not too sure. But there's also a bunch of plugins that help try to make it simpler. But it is not my strong suit. I do have a couple of videos. I have videos about all these topics, but some of them I can't remember everything off the top of my head. And even those videos I just made for my animations, I made a smiley face go around the screen, so it wasn't anything impressive.
Looks like that's all the questions that we got. That was a lot of fun. I know it was a little short, but it was a lot of fun. How did everyone enjoy that? And if you guys are interested in learning more, I definitely tell you to check out all the wonderful content that Tadas has on his YouTube channel. There's a lot. There's a lot to go there. Also, Tadas, what's the best way to reach you?
On Twitter, that's where I'm the most active. And every social media thing is just Tadas Petra. So yeah, kind of lucky nobody has that exact name. So
I guess having a unique name really helps.
yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this Wednesday. Really informative intro session. I'm sure that there's a lot to learn. You know, it's funny. Flutter kind of reminds me of React a lot. I don't know if this was like intentional when they built it or.
So I think from what I've heard, again, my opinion is a bit biased, but it's supposed to be a competitor to React. So that's probably why you hear all the similarities. Like, but I never tried React, so I guess I don't really know those kind of things. But I heard React is still better for websites, but for the Flutter versus React Native, I heard Flutter is better for the all around. So
makes sense.
A little advice that I've heard around, but I haven't tried React. So
okay, makes sense. Cool. Someone just said Flutter reminds me of TypeScript as a language, but the flow is so easy. It reminds me of Ionic. Okay, cool. Well, thank you.
I actually came from Ionic right before Flutter.
Interesting.
But yeah, I was Ionic at that point. I think didn't have as much support, and like it was like a web view. I think now there's Ionic native, so it's a little bit different. But at that point, then I was looking to switch, and then there was React Native and Flutter, and I'm not a big fan of Facebook, so I just went with Flutter, and then that decision got validated like afterwards.
Fair. You know what? Having a strong community behind a language is so important in picking that stack. If you know, if you can't find information about it, or if that learning curve is too high, it just makes it really challenging. Kudos to you for starting this channel when you didn't find enough content on it. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's how I learned. So I was just trying to give back, kind of to the place that I learned from.
Very cool. Very cool. Just out of curiosity, I know that a lot of people in our community are looking for ways to connect with employers. Would you recommend the path that you went through, like building your own? Did you find that it was easier for you to connect to employers after you started creating YouTube content? Was it easier for you to were you already working at that point, or was this something that was more of a passion project?
So it started as a passion project,
Mm.
but I could tell you 100% it definitely gives you a big boost in terms of finding employers and stuff like that. I get messages about like freelance work all the time, but also like companies reach out for me to work Flutter. Obviously, Flutter doesn't have as big of a job presence yet. I think it's just starting to grow a lot more in the past like 6 months.
Mm.
It's so new, not that many companies were using it, but now I'm seeing more and more jobs pop up everywhere. And yeah, I get people ask me like I'm not even looking for a job, and like there's some companies that reach out. I'm like I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is a big thing though, right? Like it's learning the technology that's prominent in your area, where more jobs are, but also finding like if there's, if there's a technology or a framework or a library that you find interesting and you don't see a ton of jobs, create your own niche. Actually really, really find that super inspiring. So for everyone listening, if there's something that you guys really like and enjoy, and you just want to go deeper in it and you want to explore more, um, connect with Tadas and maybe open up that conversation of like how he started. And Tadas, I'm kind of like volunteer pushing you and to explain the YouTube side of how things work and how you
Yeah,
started.
I've been recommending people to start YouTube channels since like I was reaching like 6 months ago where I wasn't even too big, but I'm still not too big. But I think the being able to show publicly that you're able to explain things as well gives you a huge boost with employers, because being knowing how to code by yourself and like being quiet is one thing, but being able to explain your thoughts and all that just puts you on another level, and it's kind of like a resume for you already, just having stuff out there
Yeah,
and people already know what you're about, how well you can explain your thoughts.
yeah.
And it's just nice, even if you're blogging, just like being able to write your thoughts out correctly and being able to do that is a big plus.
Yeah, finding your medium, right? Like if it's writing, and if you're not a great writer, then let's go to video. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I just want to thank you for sharing all your knowledge. Really appreciate it, man.
No problem, thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks everyone. Really enjoyed this talk. Hope you did too.
All right, bye bye, thank you.
Bye.